Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Dr. Arshad Khalafzai and I am a post-positivist mixed method researcher and interdisciplinary social scientist. And being a post-positivist, I believe that researchers cannot be infallible about their claims of knowledge. In other words, the researchers cannot be absolutely sure about their claim of knowledge, since human knowledge is essentially dynamic because of numerous variables. Some are unknowns and many are unknown. So knowledge is dynamic, and as we know more variables, we improve on producing knowledge. The purpose of making these videos and uploading on my channel is to share my knowledge on what knowledge is and how knowledge is produced. In other words, I will be talking about a very rare concept starting from philosophy of knowledge, which means cosmology, ontology, epistemology, methodology, and exology, research designs, the criteria to evaluate research, both qualitative and quantitative. So to start with, this is my first video on criteria to evaluating social research. These are the contents of this video that I will be briefly talking about the criteria used for evaluating both quantitative research and qualitative research, keeping in mind the themes of this topic. And to help you ensure producing real knowledge based on facts and reality and reasoning of human mind. Nevertheless, universities must essentially produce knowledge which is of quality and a real knowledge because universities are the knowledge producing hubs. So I will be talking about first quantitative research criteria, which includes reliability, replicability, validity, and also a measure or an indicator, which is based on a variable. A variable is which vary with time, and qualitative research criteria would include, which basically is collectively called trustworthiness, which would include credibility, transferability, dependability, confirmability, and the concept of intersubjectivity. Much of the discourse in the social sciences and interdisciplinary social sciences, in particular theories and research and cause and effect, revolves around different types of variables. The criteria for evaluating research essentially involve the measurement of different variables. So 3 of the most commonly used criteria for evaluating quantitative research are reliability, credibility, and validity. Quantitative researchers are consumed with the issue whether measures of social science concept, for example, poverty and vulnerability, are reliable. In other words, would the same results be achieved if the same measurement techniques were used by a researcher several times to the same research subjects or participants? In other words, if The answer is yes, the measure is considered reliable. Reliability, now I will talk about replicability. So reliability is related to another criteria of replicability. A research or study will be replicable if others are able to repeat it and get the same results. At times, replications are carried out to ensure that the original research was completed properly. This is particularly important if a study's results are not consistent or do not match prior findings concerning the topic. Therefore, the initial researcher must spell out and list very clearly and explicitly to document all the research procedures and processes in great detail. In other words, the steps are written down and documented with every little detail so that other researcher, if they could easily follow the same process and see if they get the same results to make the to determine if the findings are replicable or the research is replicable or repeatable. Validity is a crucial criterion. So in the evaluation of social quantitative research, validity is concerned with the integrity of conclusions provided by a research, whether those research are valid and can be considered valid and to make it a real knowledge. Measurement or construct validity is applied actually to quantitative research and its measures of social concepts, as I said earlier, poverty or vulnerability. It refers to whether a particular indicator actually does measure what is meant to measure. If we have an indicator or a variable and we want to measure it, so if it does actually measure what we want to measure, would be valid concept or indicator. In other words, does the measure used by the researcher really gauge the concept or measure what we want to measure? If it does not, the research finding is or becomes questionable. Internal validity, there are three types of validities, as I said. First, I talked about measurement and construct. The second is internal validity, which relates to causality, that is cause and effect, or independent variables do affect dependent variables. So internal validity is concerned with how confident a researcher can be that the independent variable actually does have an impact or influence on the dependent variables. In simple words, if independent variable changes or increases, and there is a positive relationship between the two, the dependent variable should also increase. If it does not, so there is no positive relationship. So there won't be internal validity, means the cause would, independent variable would not affect the dependent variable, so there won't be causality factor. The third is external validity, which involves two things. First, whether a study's findings are applicable in settings outside the research environment, particularly in natural social settings or everyday life or settings. Second, whether results of a study can be generalized beyond the people or cases investigated. This primarily depends on how participants are selected. That includes the sampling techniques used, and if the data is representative of population, which includes all subgroups of the population. Here, the two things are very important. That and the probability sample, if you have used the probability sampling technique to select individuals in which every individual of the population or the sample frame has equal chances to be selected, is called probability sampling. There are different types of probability sampling, but this is not the topic of today's video. And then the other condition of generalizability is that the data must be representative, that all subgroups of the population are included in the sample. Means men and women, men and women of different ages, of different socioeconomic backgrounds, of different academic backgrounds, different professions, and so forth. So now I'll talk about qualitative research, and trustworthiness or authenticity is the key point here. As stated in previous slide, measurement validity and a reasonable level of internal validity cannot guarantee this form of external validity, which means generalizability, particularly for qualitative research. Therefore, qualitative research tends to meet the requirement of external validity because it often takes a naturalistic stance. Naturalism in this context refers to a style of research that essentially seeks to minimize the use of artificial methods of data collection. In other words, the social world should be disturbed as little as possible while researching. The qualitative researchers go into natural settings, in communities, and do not disturb the natural settings while collecting data. Some qualitative researchers even agree that it is inappropriate to apply the concept of reliability and validity to their qualitative research. Keep in mind that reliability and validity are the criteria included for quantitative research evaluation. Hence, qualitative researchers propose that their research be evaluated using different criteria of trustworthiness as a criteria of how good a qualitative research is. So each aspect of trustworthiness has a parallel with the criteria discussed earlier. First, credibility is parallel to internal validity in quantitative research, which means the credibility is that how reliable is the finding. In simple words, or in other words, did the researcher allow personal values to ruin any chances of intersubjectivity? I will discuss the concept of intersubjectivity later on. Second is transferability, which is parallel to external validity, which means generalizability. So do the findings apply to other people and other contexts? And third is dependability, which is parallel to reliability, which means are the findings likely to be consistent over time? Fourth is confirmability, which is parallel to replicability. And replicability would mean that would another researchers reach the same conclusion that a researcher who has already done research and reached to the conclusion? So then the findings would be dependable, confirmable. Measurement and indicators are, in this regard, there are a few key questions that needs to be addressed, because we want to know whether results of a measure or an indicator fluctuate over time. Remember that variable is a variable which fluctuates or changes over time. So whether multiple measures in one settings are consistent. A measure will be consistent if it provides the same result, or it does not have inconsistency in the same setting. So more than one researchers taking part in subjective judgmental judgments, such as recording observations. And the concerning measurement variable, whether an indicator devised or developed to gauge a concept actually does so. So when we develop indicators or measure, and want to know whether that indicator is trying to measure, does actually measure what we are trying to measure. And face validity is asking experts for their opinion if the measure that we have developed or indicator appears to be valid. So it's just by looking at the indicator or measure, an expert can say if it looks like to be valid or not. Second is concurrent validity, which refers to implying a criterion relevant to the concept in question. Fourth is construct validity, and it refers to whether concepts used relate to each other. And next is convergent validity, in which the measures, they converge at a point, and the findings are basically converging on a certain point. Now, intersubjectivity in qualitative research is very important and can be defined as the interchange of thoughts, including those that are conscious and those that are unconscious, between two persons or two researchers, or more than two researchers. In simple words, if we ask two people to draw, for example, the shape on an apple, and they most likely would draw in the same manner. But in abstract things or in emotions or opinions, more than one researchers can have different understanding and describing the phenomena differently, which would not actually fulfill the criteria of intersubjectivity between researchers. So the findings would not be reliable or dependable. Thank you for watching this video. If you have, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer if you post them on in the comments. And I would be uploading more videos to share knowledge. And if you really, and please do subscribe so that you see the next video and get the notification to learn and exchange knowledge. Thank you very much.